Check, 1, 2. Check.
Okay, we're gonna get started in 2 minutes. 2-minute warning. We're down to 1 minute. We're down to 1 minute. You got 1 more minute to go through. Cup of coffee, glass of water, little snacks. Good morning, and good afternoon for some folks online, and even good evening to some folks. My name is Rick Griffin, and I am the Director to Community Resilience Initiative, and I get the pleasure to welcome you to our 7th annual CRI conference. This is Resilience Showcase 2022, and for those that are here in person, just to let you know, we're going to talk about some logistics here in a second, but this is going to be a little different than other years, as we struggle to get back to a new normal or an old abnormal. Not sure which one it is anymore, but we're going to do things a little different. We've got about 20 folks represented, or 20 states, represented online in about 4 countries, and we've got some special guests here in the audience, so really excited about that today. And for those of you who know us and have been in a relationship with us for a while, I know you'll be flexible and you'll give us the benefit of the doubt, and I'm very thankful for that. But for those of you who are new to CRI, I do want to say I want to build a relationship with you, and like any new relationship, it requires a little bit of trust. I want to get to know you, you can get to know me a little bit. So in the spirit of that authenticity, I'm going to share just a small little confession that I have to the group. And typically at conferences, we say, what happens in conference should never stay at conference, right? That you should go and spread it wide and abroad, but this little secret, I want you to hold close to the vest, if you will. But so it's my guilty pleasure that I've watched every episode of the first 2 seasons of Grey's Anatomy. Well, see, there's somebody who can identify with that on my side, so I don't feel all alone here. But and the reason why I say that is because there's a special line in season 2, early on, Mary, the character. She finally has the courage to go up to her love interest, Dr. McDreamy, and she says that she knows that he is kind of debating and kind of struggling with the relationship, a former relationship as well. So she looks him in the eye and she says, "Pick me, choose me, love me." And so that's what I want you to think about today. Now I'm going to substitute that me really for us and for now. And I say that because there's a lot of you who you're going to have some of the schemas in your brain. You're going to be thinking about other conferences that you participated in, other speakers, other keynotes, what they look like, what they feel like, what they sound like. I want you to just kind of let that go and be with us now, the irrefutable miracle of now. So pick now, choose now, and love now. And I think it'll be wonderful for you because it is a little different, a little hybrid. So we've got folks online, got folks here in the room. So I'm going to give you 2 sets of instructions in terms of logistics. For those of you online, you have access to a chat function. Carol Dawson and Tom Dawson are standing by, and they're going to help you anything that you need. Look at that, ask the organizer, chat with them, and they'll help you out. And so for those of you here in the room, in order to keep you safe and keep things rolling along, brought with me my train whistle. Okay? So what you're going to hear as you're in between breaks, as you're running around, you're going to hear two pleasant sounds, just a quick. And when you hear that, you're going to hear my voice say, "All aboard!" And your task is going to be to say, "All aboard" back in the same tone, in the same volume, in the same cadence that I said that, so that you can return right back to the space here. Okay? You want to practice that a little bit? Okay, so here, say it outside. All aboard?
All aboard.
You got it. There we go. So now, what if I were to say, all aboard? All aboard. See, I told you we had special people here. It's exciting. So thank you. You got that right. And I'm a little biased, but I think our content is going to be a little special today as well. If you're with us last year, you had a chance to hear us talk about adversity and really the diversity of adversity and the variation of the human experience that occurred with adversity. And this year, we've got practitioners from all over the country that are going to share with you about the diversity of resilience and all the different ways that people can experience resilience. And resilience really is diverse. As a matter of fact, our keynote kickoff speaker today, he can speak in many different languages. He is actually a native of the United States, works out of Canada, and lives in Mexico. So although he can speak English well and speak Spanish well, it's the language of love that you're going to hear from him today. So I'm really excited to introduce to you a great speaker, a great musician, and a great friend. Please welcome to the stage and to your screen, and hopefully into your hearts, our keynote speaker, Dr. Jerry Goldberg.
Thanks so much, Rick, and thank all of you for coming this morning. You know, you're spread out, and I don't know what it is about events that everybody loves to sit towards the back, the first out the door, but there's a door up here, too. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can, grab your chair and move up into this area here, and if you want a little bit more distance from people, just go like this. Or not. Dream, a vision unto me. Fire burns in my heart, a passion sweet. And there is a calling, a calling to faith. Give your people longing and to live them. My soul, I hear you calling. Oh, my soul, I hear you calling. In a hungry shadows, empty eyes, his mother's to be. Every night's violent dad, his last hope. There is a calling, wake the flame, calling to believe. There's a dance of power, the press of past, we better hold to our beliefs. Oh, my soul, keep calling. Oh, my soul, calling. It's a matter of commitment. It's a matter of compassion. In a world facing change, I hear you calling. Hey, I've been shadowed by my dream, a vision haunting me. To believe that we've been caught, and there is a calling awakening. coming. When I first started working with people in the corrections system, I don't know, maybe 40 years ago, I had a great mentor named Marvin. And Marvin was a phenomenal man, brilliant man. He could speak 7 languages fluently. At most, like Rick was saying, I can embarrass myself in 2. But he was prior to being a chaplain, he was a photojournalist for Life magazine, a war correspondent. So if you can imagine what his eyes had seen. And he was a photojournalist before the days of flash photography. So he had to narrate a story with what available light he could find. And that's what he always said. He said, what we do here in this prison is before we walk into any cell, we try to find the available light that will narrate a story of hope and resilience. If you work with people, that's what you do. You find out what available light is there so that you can narrate a story of hope and resilience. And we would do that. And sometimes it's just the smallest candle. But when it's dark, even the smallest candle makes a huge difference. Sometimes the darkness nearly overwhelms me, and the candle that I hold is small and weak. Sometimes it flickers, barely just a breath away from light, and I can feel the fear that stalks my life. Trembling, I attempt to lift my candle, this tender flame of hope within my soul. And it always seems, just when the darkness threatens most, even the tiniest flame can make the brightest glow. So it may be weak and feel low, it may be small and dim, but the smallest candle still dispels the night. And I will bear it proudly, my tiny dancing flame. It may be all I have, but it's enough to bring some light. And to a world needing hope, it will seem right. Now I don't confess to be some mighty lighthouse, a flame that seems the world never doubts. I barely glimmer like a star upon a lonely night so dark, but I'm gonna shine with all my heart. Have you ever noticed how a star is constant? And the sky that's filled with stars can guide the lost. Well, I believe that together our light will fill the sky, and we can burn constant, you and I. So it may be low, and it may be small and dim, but the smallest candle still dispels the night. So let us bear the proudly our tiny dancing flame. And maybe all we have, but it's enough to bring some light. And to the world needing hope, it will seem right. Oh, world needing hope, it will seem right.
love to do engagement songs where people can sing along. This is a song I wrote a long time ago. And there's a sing-along part in it, and I'll teach it to you when I get there. Back when I was a child of 10, I got me a rooster and I named him Hen. You know, they don't get that in the city. If you say, I got a rooster named Hen, they're like, okay, why not? Well, I love that song, but I must admit, but every time I sang it, my dad would he'd sing. My name is Hen. How you do? That's the sing-along part. And I tell you, we'll make it real simple. Every time I do a part, you just sing it back to me. And as a warm-up today, whenever I say all right, you say okay. All right?
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
No, all right.
Okay.
Okay. You are a very smart group. Say all right?
Okay.
Let's try it. Cock-a-doodle-doodle.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Cock-a-roodle-eye.
Cock-a-rooney-eye.
Luck, luck, chicken muck.
Buck, buck, chicken buck.
It's okay to say chicken muck. It doesn't mean anything. Booty-ay. Just boom ba. Ba ba choo. That's your solo part. Ba ba. Let's try that. Sis boom ba. Ba ba choo. My name is Han.
My name is Dan.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Very good. Well, I love that song, but I must admit, but every time I sang it, my daddy had a fit, because every single evening at 10:15, I'd hear my rooster by the name of Hen, and he'd say, cock-a-doodle-doodle, cock-a-rooney-eye, luck, luck, chicken buck, boom-de-ay, sis-boom-ba, ba-ba-bing. No one ain't morning, but I gotta sing. Very good. Well, one day my daddy had an Uncle Hen, shot my rooster into the oven, turned the heat up and put the timer on, but when the timer turned off, well, it sang this song. Cock-a-doodle-doodle, cock-a-rooney-eye, cluck-cluck, chicken-muck, boom-de-ay, sis-boom-ba, ba-ba-ben. I just finished cooking your rooster named Hen. Well, my two kids set the table and we all took a seat. For supper that evening, we had my hens and beef. That's a sad part. But after the meal, Daddy let out a burp, and instead of a burp, this is what we heard. Cock-a-doodle-doodle, cock-a-rooney-eye, luck-luck-chicken-luck, boom-de-ay. Sis-boom-ba, ba-ba-choo. My name is Hen, and I got you. Very good. Give yourselves a hand. Rick mentioned that I'm living in Mexico now. My wife and I bought a house there 7 years ago, and we semi-retired there 2 years ago, and love it. I think the thing that I love most about where I am in Mexico are the colors. The colors are gorgeous. If you look out to the east side of our house, the house there just painted itself this bright pink. And that's what we wake up to in the morning, this bright pink house. And on the other side of our house is this house that is neon green. So you have pink on one side, neon green on the other side. And our house is kind of a yellow and some other color that my wife knows, but I don't. I'm not good at that stuff. And she really is. So she'll ask me, what color do you think should be in our house? And I'll say, I don't know, what do you think? Pink and neon green? Might as well fit in. But this is a traditional Mexican song. Some of you might know, I think Martin does. And it's about the colors. I think I learned this when I worked at the Center for Sharing. How many years ago was that?
30.
30 years ago, yeah. Rick had just arrived, and he was just barely a teenager then. He stayed young, and I got old. I don't know what he said. So if you know this song, please sing along. And if you don't know it, sing along anyway. I go by the description that if you sing well, sing loud in gratitude. If you you sing poorly, sing twice as loud in revenge. De colores como los pajaritos que vienen de fuera. De colores el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por razón los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. I love that song. Beautiful, beautiful song. Good singing. I heard some people out there. I was invited up to Canada about a decade ago to work in a province called Saskatchewan, and I had never heard of it before that. And so I said, let me Google this. So I Googled the city they wanted me to go to, and Maclean's article said the worst neighborhood in Canada. And I thought, where else would you go? Like, if you want to make a difference, find the worst place and go there. So they asked me to come up there and work on violence and bullying. And when I arrived, I got 4 schools right in that neighborhood. One alternative high school, one regular high school, and 2 elementary schools. And I sat down with the kids at the alternative school, and they agreed that bullying and violence was a problem, but it was certainly not a solution. So what we reached is that what's the opposite of bullying? And the opposite of bullying, we decided, was courtesy. And not just your normal courtesy, but an intentional courtesy. So we created this saying, I see you being courteous, intentional courtesy. Try that with me. I see you being courteous. And then we taught the older kids that whenever you catch one of the little kids being courteous, you say, I see you being courteous. And the response was, I see you too. Shall we try that? Turn to your neighbor and say, I see you. Somebody say that. Very good. Now, the other thing we did is decided what does it mean to be intentionally courteous? So we came up with this. We've got to do everything so that our kindergartners can understand it too, right? Intentional courtesy means go out of your way to be kind to the lonely, sad, and even the mad. Try that with me. Ready? Everybody go like this. Go out of your way to be kind to the lonely, sad, and even the mad. This is kind of Dr. Seussian. It rhymes. Let's try that one more time. Go out of your way to be kind to the lonely, sad, and even the mad. Very good. So how do you get high school kids to do stuff like that? Well, you don't have them go out in the hallways and do it to each other because they're like, what are you, stupid? I'm not going to do that in the hallway. So we recruited teams of high school youth to be ambassadors of courtesy to the elementary schools. And so they would go to the elementary schools and teach these techniques to the little kids. And then we had the older kids go out to the local churches and recruit adults to come to the schools and be what we called golden greeters. So at the doors of every single one of our schools, we had a golden greeter, or community members, who would learn kids' names. I will call you by your name. And catch them being courteous and model that to the kids. I think that's what every school in the world needs. Not a gun at the door, not a guard at the door, but a community member who is calling kids by name and modeling courtesy. Just the smallest things that we can do create these bridges of connection. I call them crossable bridges. Bridges I can talk to. Ask an older adult, can you come in and mentor our kids? Is like, I don't even have time to say hello to my own family, but I can come in and be courteous for 5 minutes before school starts. Sometimes the heart is silenced by the fear within our soul, and like a seed without the sun, it simply cannot grow. And sometimes the heart is silenced by the anger that we hold, like a seed choked by the weeds, it'll never grow. And sometimes the heart is silenced by mistakes our lives have known, and then trampled on the wayside, the seed just cannot grow. But do not be silenced, your heart was made to soar. Do not be silenced, don't let fear close that door. Do not be silenced, we could reach for so much more. And every heart is made to fly, to stretch and touch the sky. Go on, stretch and touch the sky. Let go, let go, and grow. Sometimes the heart is silenced when we try to stand alone, 'cause we need the love of others if we are to grow. And sometimes the heart is silenced 'cause we've forgotten how to hope. Yes, we need the help of others if we are to grow. And sometimes the heart is silenced 'cause we lost what means the most. It's in loving one another that we remember why we grow. Do not be silenced, your heart was made to soar. Do not be silenced, don't let fear close that door. Do not be silenced, we could reach for so much more. Every heart is made to fly, just to reach and touch the sky. Lord, stretch and touch the sky, and let go, and grow. In those 4 schools that I worked with, I didn't have an office, so I would oftentimes camp out in the kindergarten in the morning before kids came to school and in the afternoon after the kindergarten classes where we leave. And I was sitting in my little space there in the reading area, working on my laptop, and I saw this grade 4 student go back by and pop his head, kind of look at me, and kind of registered with him, and I went like that. And he said, and then he left and came back the next morning, and I was sitting in the same space, and he just looked at me like, what are you still doing here? And he said, Mr. Jerry, if you don't have a home to go to tonight, you can come live with us. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. You know, when children come to us, we talk about what a society invests in our children, but you know, our children invest their wonder in us. Every child should graduate from high school with more wonder than they brought to us. Don't you think that that should be the goal of education? To graduate kids with wonder, not, I can't wait to get out of here, but, oh my God, there is so much to learn, and I'm just starting. I love children, just that sense of wonder and curiosity. Sometimes watch the children before they learn of pride. Watch them with their open hearts and wonder in their eyes. For their flame love is eternal, and ours is but a spark that's been quenched by pride and held inside to be lost within the dark. For open love, its innocence, no conditions are applied. No hate, no stain, no pain, no tricks, no need to create lies. And living without loving is like a rose in black and white. It's love that brought us home, and love that brings us life. So sometimes watch the children before they learn to cry. Watch them with their open hearts and wonder in their eyes. If we could just learn what we all seek, no matter what our age, adult or children, we seek attention. We are attention-seeking missiles. It's not approval. Approval is too hard. We seek attention, and we become whatever gets attention. Children become what gets attention. And if we can attend to their acts of courtesy and catch them doing well, and specifically give them public praise about the acts of joy that they are bringing to each other, we grow the garden that we seek. If we only are focused on non-compliance, which we communicate as bad. If you're non-compliant, you must be bad. It's not true. I was a non-compliant child. I'm a non-compliant adult. But that sense of catching children doing well and modeling that for them is the greatest way to joy and growth that there is. Adolescing, I think it's a verb, it's not just a noun, but it's like having a suitcase that has no latches and no handles. And it's stuffed full of these very intense emotions. And you're trying to make it down the street or through the hallway with this thing that has no way to close it, no way to hold it. Somebody bumps into you and you drop it and it flips open and there it is. All your stuff, all your unmentionables, everything is just laid out for everyone. And when we help kids name their emotions, or adults, when we help them name their emotions, it doesn't make the suitcase lighter. It makes it easier to manage. So part of our role is not only helping articulate a beautiful vision with the available light, but helping people articulate intense emotions and putting suitcases and latches on those. I was asked to write a theme song for a youth convention in Texas. And I said, I'd love to. What's your theme? And this Texas drawl came over the phone and said, Kiss a frog. And I said, sorry, I don't have much experience with kissing frogs. Maybe you could tell me what that means to you. So I got about a dozen letters. In those days, people wrote letters from the kids in that area talking to me about what it means to kiss a frog. And I compiled those letters and came up with this song for them. Would you love me if you knew me? What I really am inside. Through all this fear and doubt that I try so hard to hide. And would you love me if you knew me? Through the masks that I have on. If I really let you know me. Through this mask of being strong, I'd give my heart to you if I could find it. And I'd give my dream to you, but would you be kind to it? So until I really know that you're not gonna turn away, I will wait until my heart knows you will stay. Would you love me if you knew me? I'm a silly little child, and I do most anything to win your approving smile. And would you love me if you knew me? Just a frog who dreams of kings. See, I got that word for frog in there. But if you could only love me, and I could be most anything, and I'd give my heart to you if I could find it, and I'd give my dream to you, but would you be kind to it? So until I really know that you're not gonna turn away, I will wait until my heart knows you will stay. Yes, until I really know that you're not gonna turn away, I will wait until my heart knows you will stay. I'd like to introduce my son came today. He's had to listen to these songs all of his life. Taylor, thanks for coming. So many people feel life is a battlefield and the fairest always win. But this I can't believe. Life is a dance to me, and the Creator calls our hearts. We gotta join in. I believe there's more than living. There's a joy to love the dancing, and the Creator leads the songs, and we share it. And sometimes that music takes us, sometimes it won't. Sometimes we sit, we watch them dance, sometimes we dance alone. We all hear the rhythms, we all share the song, and if no one seems to dance like me, still no one dances wrong. No, no one dances wrong. Down in the stillness of the soul, if the embers aren't yet cold, a little child calls to us. She calls us to the songs, calls us to belong, calls us to the dance, a dance of trust. Sometimes that music takes us, sometimes it won't. Sometimes we sit, we watch them dance, sometimes we gotta dance alone. We all hear the rhythms, we all share the songs, and if no one seems to dance like me, still no one dances wrong. No, no one dances wrong. Thank you. Rick, thank you so much for having me, Rick. When you have Rick, make sure you give him a chance to sing Happy Birthday to the Flintstones, too.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. And appreciate you for all those folks who are being patient with us. We're trying to work out that audio for those who are online. You'll get a chance to hear Jerry if he's one of the sessions that you chose to listen to. See if we can get that audio so to make it nice and clear for you folks that are listening online. But for the rest of us here, we're going to have about a 10-minute break, and you guys online will have a 10-minute break. You can get right into your sessions from the Hoover app, and we'll have you speak in about 10 minutes. We'll see you in 10.
That's why she sometimes she's got time.
No, but I mean, I mean, I get it. Like, I get it. No, I'm just being myself.
That's cool. I'm inspired.
I met like 40 plus students in between because I was at 3 schools, and then when I passed out, it was like 37. They were like, "You're here?" Which is cool. Which is cool.
You're gonna be the one that's gonna be.
You need the music stand?
No, I do not. Thank you.
No, yeah, I talked to the teacher, and the teacher was I don't know if that means the teacher was like, you know those type of teachers. Like, I think it was a teacher was like this, and it was like the end of the year. Those kids need more support. Like those kids need more encouragement. Like those kids need more. Yeah, that's what I mean. I still my first year there. I usually get back what the students do, and also based off like mine.
Rick just went to check with Kara.
Okay. Okay. Should I go back up front? Or I guess I'm on here, aren't I?
As long as you're on there, and that's the last mic. check. 1, 2, 3, check. 3, 2, 1, check. I think I hear something. Check. Check. Check.
I heard it's getting, what if you're on the road, pay attention and we can show what gives us attention.
Check.
I'm on even my clothes. Oh no? Yeah.
Check. 1.
Okay, I hear it now. Let me see if I hear it. I'm going to scoot up there, but I think I hear it there. Thank you, Alan, very much. Let's put it.
We gotta get you a guitar like that.
What's that?
I know it's out of tune, but we gotta get you a guitar like that.
Yeah? That's pretty guitar. It says Martin's guitar over there. Perfect. Great. Thanks for the guitar. Thank you for sticking around, taking a second dose this morning. I'm going to speak today about values-based living, helping people articulate and live by their values. Am I in anyone's name? Anyone's way? Y'all, everyone can see status? Okay. Want to define behavioral maturity. I define it as the ability to make life decisions based upon your values, not upon your circumstances. Does that make sense? And so for us to help people mature, we need to help them articulate and practice living by their values. But we use, in schools, there are a lot of values education programs, but I think that most values education programs fail in 4 areas. 4 assumptions. We assume that people know what a value is. But you know, if we lined up 100 adults around this room and we asked each one what a value is, I bet we'd come up with 100 responses. And so to be able to teach a value to a child or to other adults, we have to start with a common glossary. So values teaching always needs to begin with a glossary. We also assume the values that people should have. And I capitalize the SH because should is one of my least favorite SH words. What values people should have. And we assume that they should live by the values of the dominant culture. And then we assume that people learn values by being told what values are. So we'll create this incredible list of values and expect people to live by them. When in fact, adolescents especially learn not from people, but with people. You're familiar with that?
They don't learn
from, they learn with. They don't learn from books, they learn with others, and especially their peers. So if we want to really teach values to people, we have to think of ways to help people relate with values. Not hear values, not read values, but share values, whether that be through actions and catching them in their actions, or in conversations. How do we set up classes where people are conversing with each other instead of listening? I always hate walking into um, a classroom that has every chair in a straight line, as if all the knowledge is from the front. It's not. As you know, I don't know about your life. So how can I teach you if I don't know you? So I like to define the difference between a value and a convenience. Because I think in our culture, we live mostly by conveniences and not by values. A value is the way I want to be treated. I'll show you how we used to teach this to little kids. A value is the way I want to be treated, the way I will treat others. And here's the most important part: no matter how they treat me. Shall we try that together? A value is the way I want to be treated. I get feedback doing that. The way I will treat others. Make sure you include everyone. And here's the most important part: no matter how they treat me. Yeah, you got it right there. What's your name? Lorena, great job. Show that to everybody. Exactly. You got the head motion and everything going. Excellent. A convenience is changing the way I treat others based upon my circumstances. So I act one way in this room, and when I leave this room, I act a different way. That's not a value, that's a convenience. That's what's easy. A convenience is changing the way that I treat others based upon my peers, whatever my peers think. If we want people to live by values, we need to be able to define the difference between something that's a value and something that's a convenience. I'll make sure we provide these. I already have provided these slides to CRI, so anybody who wants them, don't feel like you have to take notes on everything. You're more than welcome to. I love this saying from Mr. Rogers. You know who else said that? Jean Piaget. Play is often talked about as if it is a relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. The first concept we have to understand if we're teaching values is this concept of transient hypofrontality. Big word means a small thing. It means to put the brain on hold so the brain can learn creatively. Transit means temporary. So if you are, how many here are teachers? So if you're teaching, the best time to teach is before recess. So if kids learn a difficult concept and then they go out and play, while their brain is temporarily involved in other things, or what we would call focus, all of that information goes to other sections of the brain. It's not dominated by the heavy cognitive front of the brain. It gets to go to other parts and play. So if your class is got a lot of heavy information, and then you can't send kids out to recess, they're learning that heavy information, and then when they go out and play, it's going to other sections of the brain. Now, if you're not fortunate to have a class that's right before recess, create time in the class for transient hyperfrontality. For children, transient hypofrontality comes from play. Or as Piaget said, play is the work of children. Conversation is the work of adolescents. That is how they play. So if I create opportunities, if I teach something that's really heavy and then create opportunities for kids to discuss it, I'm using transient hyperfrontality. Giving that opportunity for those things we've taught to go to the creative, more creative sections of the brain, and shutting down this part that is so dominant. We learn what we value from who values us. Whether that person that is been in our life has been a parent or a gang leader. Whoever values me, I learn those values. That's why if we want children to learn values, we need to value them. Because it's in that relationship that they start saying, oh, like a child learns to read because someone who loved them read to them. It's in that relationship that I begin to learn to want to read. So if I feel loved, if I feel like I belong, it doesn't matter if it's a gang. It doesn't matter if it's a parent. Whoever values me, I learn my values from them. And then I grow my values by valuing other people. So if I have the opportunity, like we did with those kids in intentional courtesy, it was when they went out and taught those values and modeled those values that the values became them. It's our behavior that influences our cognitions. So if you create opportunities for people to act, like when we created opportunities for kids to go to the elementary schools and go, I see you being courteous, they became how they behaved. And it changed the violence in our high school. Because we become what we practice, and the more we practice it, the more we become it. If we want to deepen values, we need to catch people doing right and give them specific public praise. The more specific the praise, the deeper the impact. So if we're in a class and I see you behaving really well, and I call you Rick, great job. When I saw you reach out to your brother Alan, that is a perfect example of courtesy. That's exactly what I want to see. Rick, I see you being courteous. What has the class just learned? They've learned, I'm sorry? No, please go ahead. Right. They've learned what behavior will get attention in my class. But if I catch you only when you're doing bad or being non-compliant, I struggle with that. There's a difference, isn't there, between bad and non-compliant? Non-compliance is good. Look at the times we live in. We need more non-compliance. So if I catch you being courteous to others and I publicly praise you for that, I am watering my garden. If I only catch you when you're undermining others and I publicly call that out, I'm watering my weeds. What do you want to grow? Remember what I just said? We said we become what gets attention. It's not about approval. If I give you attention for affirming others, that's what I grow. If I only provide attention for when you misbehave, then that's what I grow. You don't care. I mean, it's not approval. That's so hard. It's what I catch you doing and publicly call out. That's what I become. So creating opportunities to network with values beyond the classroom. How can you go practice this at home? How can you practice this in a community? For example, when we took our high school youth and we asked them to go to churches and recruit golden greeters for our doors, they had to put themselves on a line. That's called cognitive dissonance. When my behavior puts me on the line, I become how I behave, not how I think. I change my cognitions if my behavior is uncomfortable to me. That's why we can have, kids that are doing really good at home, and then they go to, a school and their behavior changes. Because when I start acting differently to impress my friends, my values change. The cognitions follow the behavior, not the other way around. So how do I create opportunities for our children in the community to go out and live by the values that we're growing? The other thing that we need to is the 3 P's. When we're naming values with kids, make it personal, present tense, and positive. Personal means it involves you, not me. So if I say, I'm proud of you, why should I get the credit? You did a really great job at helping that person down the slide. That is really a great thing that you did. It needs to be about you. It needs to be personal. It needs to be about you. Present tense means it needs to be in the now. If I'm going to grow something, it has to be in the now, not the future. Brain doesn't recognize the future, doesn't recognize the past. How do we make it personal and present tense at the now? And positive, always put the value in the positive. The brain doesn't recognize not. So when we put up signs that say, do not bully, a child who has gotten thrills from bullying, guess what they see? Do bully. And they release testosterone and start looking for victims. A child who's been bullied releases cortisol and becomes afraid and starts acting like a victim. So that's why we switched from do not bully to be courteous. Be intentionally courteous. Go out of your way to be courteous. Find someone that is least loved today and be courteous to that person without conditions. So I remember walking into a group home, and on the wall of the group home, there was this sign that said, do not swear. And I thought, I wasn't even thinking of saying a damn swear word till I saw your sign. Brain doesn't hear not. It only hears what to do. So how can you take not behavior and redefine it as a positive behavior? Do not bully. Be courteous. What else could I say besides do not use bad words? What else could I say? Use kind words. Thumper and his mom. Bambi. Yeah, very good. Be affirming, be kind, be encouraging, put courage into other hearts. That's what encourage means, to put courage and strength into somebody's heart. What we did is we helped our young people tell us their story. Tell me your story. We learned values from who valued us. Tell me about people that valued you in your life. And you know who most kids named when we were doing this with alternative school kids? Most of our kids named a grandparent. That's why I'm grieving so much for COVID. And we have lost a generation of grandparents. I don't think we have a clue how that's going to affect us in 10 or 20 years. But our Golden Greeter program focused specifically on recruiting grandparents from our community into our schools and creating crossable bridges from them. A crossable bridge is one that the volunteer says, well, I could do that. I remember we set up a program in the detention center in Walla Walla, and we would have grandparents come in and read to the kids in the detention center. And they loved it, but it was a crossable bridge. Can you come in and read for 40 minutes to a young person and then discuss what you read? We had kids reading Man's Search for Meaning while they were imprisoned and discussing this with these grandparent people. And I remember being on the road for 3 months and coming back to the correction center, the detention center, and seeing an older, elderly blind woman in the lobby and asking her, so what are you doing here? She says, oh, I'm involved in this program where we read to kids. And I said, that sounds phenomenal. Do you love it? She says, it's the best hour of my life. She said, you should do this too, because I can tell you're a good listener. So I'm in the lobby of a detention center of a program that I started, and I'm being recruited by this elderly blind woman. You know, there is no brochure that would ever match that. This woman in the community saying, if I could do this, you could do this. That's a crossable bridge. Breaking it down so people say, I could do that. How can you break down what you do to the point where people say, I could do that? With our kids, when they would say, it's my grandma loves me. And you say, so tell me an experience of that. Tell me a story about it. You know, when the brain tells you a story in detail, it doesn't recognize actually living it from actually telling it. So when that child is telling you a story about their grandma, loving them, they're living that. And you can see them releasing oxytocin all over their skin. Goosebumps. That's oxytocin. And oxytocin is the molecule of trust. You don't release it, you don't trust people. If you want to grow trust in a classroom, you have to start by releasing oxytocin. How do you do that? Get people to laugh. Look in their eyes when they laugh. I used to have tons of humorous videos that I would play before I started any classes I worked with. And then I would look for the kid that was the hardest to connect with in the class. And when it got to the funniest part of the video, I would look them in the eyes. Because that connection is oxytocin. That's trust. And in any relationship, the least engaged has the most power. If you're in a marriage where someone is disengaged, that person has the most power. If you're in a family and the teen is disengaged, that teen has the most power. If you're in a community and your teens are disengaged, most of your resources go to those teens. The least engaged always have the most power. How do you change that? You go out of your way to be kind to the lonely, sad, and even the mad. Go to the worst place and love the worst person. And then recruit them. When I worked with gangs in Yakima County, my emphasis was not to change gang behavior. My emphasis was to encourage and enable the young people to live by the values they learned. What values do you learn in a gang? I'm sorry? Family. You learn family. You learn, what else? Loyalty. Respect. It's huge. leadership, community, absolutely, and what it is to them. So remember when I mentioned Martin, Chaplain Marvin, and he would find what available light was there? Every story of someone you love has available light. So our emphasis is to find the available light. Tell me a story about that. And the more detailed the story, the more you're living it. In all the years and the hundreds of interviews that I've done this in my life, where I'm asking a kid, tell me about someone who loved you, who was there for you even when you were behaving poorly. My grandma, my grandma, my grandma. I had one kid in all of those years, and believe me, when I worked with group homes and corrections, people would say, oh, have I got a kid for you. That's my kid. I love that kid. Their story is the most important story to me. So find what is the available right light in this relationship. Tell me a story about when your grandmother loved you. I remember one young lady whose mother had died behind a bar at 40 below in Saskatchewan and left 7 children. And her teacher, amazing teacher, Mr. Ward, in the grade 7 class in the worst neighborhood in Canada, sat down with her and said, when do you remember learning the best? And she said, when I was at my grandma's house, and she would put soup and bannock on, and we would sit in the kitchen, and I could smell the soup, and I would study. And Mr. Ward said, what would be wrong if I set up a Bunsen burner in my classroom? And the smell of soup when my kids were studying. And it brought that girl back. She was on the brink. We were losing her. And you know why? Because every morning she would go to the front of the school. All of the other children had been adopted to other families. And she would count her siblings coming to school. And she was failing herself. But when Mr. Ward put soup on in the classroom, she remembered her grandma. What is it that your grandma gave you? She gave me respect unconditionally, and it deepened my positive attitude. This is her values card. We make these cards on cardstock paper in color. And we find a symbol that matters to them. Her symbol was family, her 7 siblings and her grandma. So the symbol means deep things to her. And the words that she said, these are her values, not my values. I want to know her values. Who valued you, and what did they do that made you feel valued? She respected me without conditions. She gave me a positive attitude. We create these cards, and they can go out into the community and share them with people. She went and shared this with her boyfriend, and she said, will you help me live this way? And he said, no. And so she said, so why am I hanging out with you? It's not about her living by my values. It's about her articulating her values and living by them. That's maturity.
then we need to review those values habitually. So what we would teach people in group homes and corrections is twice a week sit down with those young people and ask them to tell you about their values card. How did you live by your values this week? Tell me a story. And kids start gathering, they start looking for stories to tell you about how they're living by their values. Then they sign it and they date it. It's a commitment to themselves. It's a covenant with themselves. They make a contract with themselves to live by their own values. What questions might you have of the things that I've said today? Yes, please. I don't see any difference between adolescing and adults. I know that clinically there's definitely a difference in the development of the brain. But when I'm in a prison and I'm surrounded by the gentlemen there, I'm surrounded by adolescents who have had a huge amount of adversity in their lives. And I believe we lock people up for trauma. We lock adults up for childhood adversity. And I've done this program in correction centers all over the United States and Canada. I don't think there's any difference. We all have a story that we can tell. And in that story is available light. We can go back and find it. Help people go back and find those beautiful experiences. Thank you for that question. Yes, please. I think also for adults, it's conversation. I think we play through conversation. Great questions. Any other questions, thoughts, or ideas? Yes, please, Jesse.
At what point do you see like these values now peer to peer? Like at what point do you start to take your hands off a little bit and let like the community guide itself, or does that happen?
That's a great question. I think as soon as possible.
Jerry, can you rephrase that question for folks who may not be able to hear?
Oh, sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but at what point do I let go and allow them to live by those values? Is that fairly close? Okay. As soon as possible. The moment that they get their card is the moment that we send them out to the community. And we start simple, start with people you know, and then expand from there. And then practice in the classroom. Create chances. Let's pretend I'm your grandmother, you're coming to me and you're going to share your values. Practice it on me. Tell me about your values. Tell me about your card. Create opportunities in the classroom to practice this. And then send them out and then come back to it the next day. How did it go? Tell me your story. There are more questions.
Would it be also when you start seeing them maturity in them, taking initiative in their own practices with the value card?
Yes, I think that's right. Is the moment that they start practicing their values, they start becoming those values, and that's when we mature. Yes, please. Did I answer your question all right?
So how do you kind of go about removing what they already think or they know and changing them?
That is their life these days. They live their lives online. And we actually created a protocol where kids could create their own website based upon their values.
and then invite people to their website. And then learn how to teach other people to do the same thing. So creating their opportunities to take that home and express it socially. Come and see my website. Any other questions? Yes, please. Here, let me give you my mic. Oh, thanks. Okay.
We talked a lot about bullying prevention, but what do you say to a child that's being bullied, and what do you say, like, what do you encourage that child to tell their bully?
Rephrase that for me one more time.
So I'm thinking about bullying and
Right.
prevention. We talked about prevention, so speaking courteous to others, but what do you say to a child that's being bullied to tell their bully? I experienced this week with my child when he was being bullied, and I didn't know what to tell him, to tell the person who was bullying him. So what would you say to that?
It's the process of time. It's that whole concept of unconditionally. No matter how they behave, we're going to behave this way. And we're going to help other people behave with courtesy as well. It's got to be a movement in a school where again, when we assume values, and we often, when we go back to the assumptions, and the assumptions are that people know what a value is and people are going to live by the values of the dominant culture. Dominant culture doesn't necessarily have great values. It's a bullying culture, and becoming even more so today. It's becoming cool to bully among adults. Man, the behavior's in airports these days. And so being able to articulate it, and that whole concept of intentional and unconditional. No matter what other people do, we are going to be unconditional. We are going to be courteous unconditionally. And I hate that word. I don't like the word love anymore, because it's so wishy-washy, and it's become, when we say unconditional love, what does that even mean? I prefer the term unconditional dignity. No matter what you do, I will seek your dignity. And even when you're not, I will seek your dignity. So how do we raise a generation to seek the unconditional dignity of others? That bully has no, probably has no internal dignity or strength of values. How do I unconditionally and intentionally seek out and give? And for any child who is bullied, there's other kids in school that are being bullied too. How do I seek them and be that unconditional dignity to them? Please. Right. And part of that, again, is first we define the glossary. What is a value? It's the way I want to be treated, the way I will treat others, no matter how they treat me. So start with the glossary that even your kindergartners can do this. And maybe much better than me. It's this old guy. They're like, why are you doing that? But beginning with that common glossary about what a value is, and then naming their values based upon their beloved experiences. So when your grandma acted that way with you, how did you feel? What do you remember? So she was always positive to you. She always gave you respect. Sometimes we name the words and then teach what that means. We tie it into what they felt. How can you do that here at home? How can we do that with each other? Give me examples. And when they say, well, I guess I could help, with the garbage. Perfect example. And then when they do it, catch them. Wow, look at you. You're living by what you said you'd live by. That's a great example. Really good example of respecting and building the family. Catch them. Set it up and catch them. These are excellent questions. I think I have 1 minute.
Yes, since we have 2 questions left, so if we can address this one, we've got one more.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to add to like what she had a comment about bullying and with her son. My mother like had him on, and I have 2 little ones, and sometimes I feel like when they come with their challenges, like I need to like have an answer, or like I want to be a mom and kind of like get in there and just tell all the kids to stop being mean to my children. But there was a recent situation where my daughter came home and she was having a challenge with her teacher. Obviously, as a parent, I wanted to, talk to the teacher, but what I did was kind of then went back and asked myself, like, what resources are in her school so she can feel safe to go to, like, during times that I'm not there. And what I did the next day is, like, I took her to the counselors, to her counselor, and I talked to her counselor in front of in front of my daughter, and basically I just told my daughter and my counselor, like, this is what's gonna happen. Like, obviously if something happens, like, my daughter, this is who you need to talk to during school. And then that way the counselor knew, like, obviously there was a conversation between me and her, there's a conversation between the counselor. So going back to the bullying part, just find the resources that are at his school, so then whenever he feels like he's being picked on, he can then go and go with those resources and get connected and feel like has that support when you're away. Because as a mom, like, you want to be there, you want to protect your children, but then you have to be at work too.
Tie the strings for them. That's a great example. Thank you.
One last question, hopefully you can answer quickly.
You talked a lot about the culture and how bullying is really more the norm and it's valued, right? And those 3 steps are great. What I value, how I treat others, and no matter how others treat me. What do you have any tips or best practices when that is just not enough and they just start giving up on their own values? How do you keep them in the fight?
I'm going to take these off because I can't hear very well. I think it's, for us, it's the consistent modeling. And that's what we got. And we consistently model and we consistently talk about the values. And ask them, give me stories. Give me stories about when you practice this. Thank you. And I think that's our time.
Yes, thank you very much. We'll see you again. Actually, about 9.5, so. Okay, well, welcome. Alan, do you have the volume on? Can folks hear me in the room okay? Sounds excellent. Well, once again, I am still Rick, for those who are confused. Just by show of hands, how many of you heard me speak before? Now, where were the rest of you when I was introducing the conference? Did you not recognize it was still me? Yeah, it was still me. I'm still here, so love to, and I have to tell you a dad joke. So I got to start the day. I've got two beautiful boys, 16-year-old, 11-year-old, and they'd appreciate my dad joke. So, Magic Wizard. Yeah, my son's into wizards. So a magic wizard comes up to a social worker, knowing it had been a really tough year. Social workers have been through so much and have seen so many things happen, and said, you guys have been through so much, and I just want to honor you with just a wish. So just what's one thing you really wish for, and I'm going to grant it for you. The social worker thinks for a second and says, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, but I don't like planes and I don't like boats. So if you could build me a highway all from Washington all the way over to Hawaii, that would be great. And the magic wizard said, are you crazy? Do you realize how much asphalt it would take to build a highway 3,000 miles and the cement to have the pillars go through the ocean? Just the ecological disaster that it would create. Social worker started thinking and said, yeah, okay, you're right, I'm sorry. So, I really would like to understand how to build resilient relationships. And the wizard said, thinking a one-lane highway or a two-lane highway? So all about resilience. It's tough, but it's not magic. It really is science. So we're going to talk a little bit of science. I know science, for most of you, science is not your favorite subject. But if science could really help you to design resilient strategies that can empower folks that are dealing with issues of grief and issues of depression, would you be interested in that science? Now, if science could help you find ways to create safety and connection, not only for yourself but for others, would you be down for that? If science could help you to experience a 40-minute breakout session that would transform your life forever, would you be okay with that? Okay, that one's a little bit magical, but we're going to talk a little science, but only a little bit of science. I must confess that I want you to expect the right and the good things from me. So I'm gonna just get a little nerdy. So I'll break down a little bit of science, but I'm also going to get a little flirty because we want to talk about relationships. So I'm going to flirt with myself quite a bit while I'm up here on the stage, and then we're going to get down and dirty. Okay, we're going to talk about resilience. We're going to talk about what does it look like, what does it feel like, what can we do to really start designing strategies that can be extremely helpful. So that's what we want to do today. So start off, get a little nerdy, talk about the science of relationships. When we think about the science, it really is fabulous because it starts with this wonderful thing we call sensory input. Sensations come through the world. It's what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch. All the sensations, all those sensations, they happen to you. Okay? And what happens is it runs through a statistical prediction. Okay? Your brain starts to say, have I ever experienced these sensations before? And then it figures out, well, what should I do? Am I off? Oh, no, my brother will get that working out. But I'm going to try to talk as loud as I can for you. Yeah, I'll have to use my outside voice. Maybe it's my police officer, but maybe I should get mirrored sunglasses and say, oh, too much experience with that. Maybe. But those statistical predictions, your brain starts to take all those sensations. Have I ever experienced these sensations before? They're like raindrops. The very first time you had raindrops, your brain would say, I don't know what to do. What is this? I'm experiencing these things that hit my face. But once you've experienced it before, it's not so shocking. And so the statistical prediction starts to say, it takes all the numbers, all the calculations, says, what have we experienced before and what should we do? All in one service, and that's to keep our bodies safe. The brain's number one purpose is to run the body. I mean, a lot of times we think that brain is all about thinking and learning. And no, it's to run the body as its primary purpose. Now, we can do all those other things, but it's got to figure out, first of all, how to keep us alive. Make sure that the heart is beating at the right rhythm. Make sure the lung capacity, because we know all those things, if it's not monitored and done well, things start to get pretty chaotic pretty quickly. So it takes all the sensory information, and this happens to everybody who has a brain, everybody who has those billions of neurons in their brain, takes all those sensations, runs them through this kind of algorithm saying, what should we do? How do I help this body move towards safety and away from threat? And so we call it the predicting brain. And I know there's lots of you online who we've talked about the predicting brain before, but I want to share it in a different way in the sense that it's like this side, we're going to go towards threat first. What happens when that statistical prediction in your brain experiences a threat? Dr. Nadine Burke Harris has a great TED Talk, and she talks about when you're walking down maybe in the park, and a bear jumps behind a tree. Now, most of us would think, gosh, that would be alarming. But only if you know what a bear is, right? So once your system has detected that, hey, oh, I know what this is. This is a threat. This is a threat, and what we call unbalanced interoception, your internal sensations. That's what interoception is. It's your sensations on the inside. And it figures out, oh, this is a threat, and it starts to get out of balance. Our body's designed to be in balance. But if that bear jumps out, and we know what a bear is, our body comes out of balance. And we know that the chemicals that are released, the cortisols and adrenaline, when we know most of that, that's what gets released. And it depends on how much dose our body thinks we're in a threat to how much of those chemicals it will release. And it leads us into what we call that fight, flight, or freeze. Now, there's a lot of other F words that people put in there in terms of our actions and behaviors, but for the most part, science talk about, that we fight, flight, or sometimes we freeze, but it drives us to action. Our body says, you got to do something. You're under this threat. You got to do something. And that whole process takes up a lot of energy. And our bodies aren't designed to use up that much energy. So it starts borrowing it from other places in the body. The body's really smart, and it starts to think, wait a minute, you're in this threat right now, and it's fine, and it's great when the bear jumps out. That's what I love what Dr. Burke says. She says, when that bear jumps out, it's great in that initial small response when that cortisol and adrenaline gets going, because it'll help you to do something. It'll help you maybe to run. But she says, what happens when the bear comes home with you? What happens when the threat is all around you and persistent? And your body's not designed to go through, have all that cortisol and that adrenaline flowing through it all the time. Then what happens? And so what your body says is, we weren't designed to have this much threat. And so it starts borrowing from other systems. I know this is a little simplistic. It starts to say, hey, wait a minute. You don't need all this energy to run your digestive system in the middle of a fight, so let me borrow some of that energy. You don't need energy in your reproductive system in the middle of a fight. Let me borrow some of that energy. Your circadian rhythms, what helps you go to bed and wake up. You don't need any of that energy. Let me borrow some of that. What do you think is going to happen to the body when it's borrowing that energy constantly from those other systems? Yeah, they're going to go offline. And then we wonder why stress is so related to adult onset disease. What do you think is going to happen to the digestive system when it hasn't been running full of energy for a long time? And so what's really beautiful about this is that we've got this return that goes on. We start to associate all the other things that we're experiencing with threat. If you were indeed walking down a park and the bear jumps out, you're going to remember that, because that threat's going to, and then the rustling of the leaves that you heard just before that may start to cause a threat, even before the bear's not even there. I mean, even the green grass walking through the park might start a threat, and you're going to start associating everything with threat. But that's one side of the picture. I'd like to talk about what happens on the other side of the picture. Same thing happens in the beginning. Same sensory input could happen, but your statistical predictions might predict safety instead of a threat, right? It might. What do you think would happen to an infant that doesn't know what a bear is? The only bear they've ever seen is that stuffed animal in their crib, right? That has those ears, like that, and the nose pumps out like this, and it's got soft and fur. That infant may want to run up and hug it. Same sensory input, but a different statistical prediction. And so it starts predicting safety. And what's great is what Jerry talked about, a whole different set of chemicals are released, because now the body's in balance. And we were designed with the way to reward our body for being in balance. So it sends out these other chemicals that we call, the reward system, the dopamines, the serotonins, the oxytocins, the vasopressins. And so we've got these chemicals now that are being pumped through our veins, trying to help us stay connected. The goosebumps. Oxytocin is its highest percent of the body for a female after the birth of the second child and beyond. It's like nature's way of saying, hey, well, just so you know, you can love your other children just as much. And in my family, my mother, who's here with us today, she had more oxytocin pumped out when I was born, of course. And so her love for me is much greater than all the other kids. And, And it produces other chemicals of threat and jealousy in my brother and everything. But for the rest of us, you get this great sense of love. It's chemicals rushing through your body that's helping you feel safe and connected. And the association of those other sensations are the same in a sense, because now we're looking at being associated with all those good feelings that come along. Instead of the threat, you're associating that experience with other good things. It's like I remember when my youngest son was born, he had this crib, and I would kind of peek into the door. He was sleeping, but I had to see him. I'd peek my head in there, and he'd hear the doorknob turn, and he'd pop up, and he'd put his head over there, and he'd just smile, and because he knew what was coming. That sensation of that doorknob turning, he knew it was coming. And it already started that flow of those positive hormones and chemicals producing in him. And so the same processes occur on that threat side of that. That's what we call trauma. And we've learned a lot about trauma. That's the phenomenon known as trauma, is that threat that occurs from all the adversities that happen in our life. But those other predictions, that's the phenomenon known as resilience. That's when we start feeling connected. We feel engaged because there's a different set of chemicals that are coursing through our body. And sometimes our body's having to flush out some of those harmful chemicals. And we just need a little bit more of those positive chemicals to flush it all out. You think about if I had a glass, I could really demonstrate that for you. But think about, maybe it was Pepsi. Okay, we'll look at Pepsi as being those harmful chemicals, because I prefer Coke. So I'm going to say that the harmful chemicals are Pepsi. And that's a dark color. And if I pour just a little bit of that clear liquid of that feel-good chemicals in there, it'd still be a little diluted. But the more of that feel-good chemical I could pour in, what begins to happen? The color lightens up more and more. And what happens when I pour even more? It starts to overflow. And when it starts to overflow, what happens to the things around it? The other people that I touch and the other environments that I'm exposed to also start to get impacted with those feel-good chemicals. So that's what I love about the science of resilience, is that not only are chemicals in our own body starting to help us to be able to connect to the outside world, everybody we touch and talk to will feel so much better. So I told you I was just going to give you a little bit of science, but so I really wanted to help you to understand that our body is going through this all the time, depending on how our statistical predictions are viewing the event. Are we interpreting that as a threat? Are we interpreting it as safe? Now, it's not binary. We clearly, there's a difference. When a bear literally jumps out, and we know what a bear can do to us, the amount of cortisol and adrenaline that's going to flow through our body is a lot higher than when we receive that email, like from our supervisor. Yeah, it's a little annoying, right? Sorry about that. It may be a little annoying, but it's not traumatizing to us. And so that's the hope, is that we can understand that depending on how we interpret it. Now, if you were about to lose your job from that email and your subsistence and you couldn't take care of your family, now the amount of cortisol that is going to be dumped into that body from that email is a little higher. And likewise with those feel-good chemicals. I mean, it's a difference between, when somebody looks at you and they smile and you feel warm and those chemicals are released. But when that loved one that gives you a hug and can't wait to see you, now that chemical is released in higher doses. So when we talk about designing resilient strategies, the whole purpose is to how do we now infuse more of those feel-good chemicals into people? The higher degree, the higher amount of chemicals that we can release through what we do, the greater impact it's going to have. So how do we design experiences that release those chemicals? That's really all the science is. So I told you I was going to get a little nerdy. So it's just a little nerdy. But if you've got some real nerdy questions, I can nerd out with you maybe at the break. But I also want to get just a little flirty and talk about the impact of relationships. Because that's what it's like. It's like when we know that somebody's interested in us and wants to be in a relationship, man, things are great. And I want to talk about it for you. I think we already understand that the present relationships have been the #1 protective factor of all time. It has never been questioned. It has always been the highest. No matter how long they've been collecting these statistics, they will always tell you, no matter what the social ill is, a relationship is the #1 protective factor. But do you know we have no institutions in our culture that their primary purpose is to teach us to build relationships? Now, doesn't that seem odd? The #1 protective factor of all time, but there are no institutions that really teach us how to do that. Where do we learn in our cultures how to build relationships? Where do we learn? Our parents? Yeah. Where else? Peers? Media? Right? Are those great places to always learn about relationships? Yeah. Again, I've watched Grey's Anatomy. I know. It's not always the best place to learn about relationships. And so we have to understand that we need to do better. If the science is clear, it's the #1 protective factor of all times, we've got to be teaching it better. So our resilience strategies have to be about teaching relationships, because the impact of relationships matter. By show of hands, how many of you have ever heard somebody say, I love you? Raise your hands high. Have you ever heard somebody say, I love you? Keep it up. Have you ever found out they lied? Yeah, that's true too, isn't it? Yeah. So the impact of relationships, it takes us on that roller coaster, on those ups and downs. And it gets hard. So I want to talk first about the past relationships. When we're thinking of our past relationships, that's those, depending on whether it was a feel-good relationship or a threatening relationship, the association, those arrows that go back to sensory input, we're associating a lot of things with that relationship. And you will bring that into your next relationship, because that's the triggers, if you will, the sensory input is going to be based on that relationship. So if it was a good relationship and they smiled for you every morning, the next relationship, you're probably going to appreciate that smile. But if that smile was a sinister smile, you know what I'm talking about? That creepy smile. And when somebody starts to smile at you, like, oh, you just get a different feeling, don't you? A whole different set of chemicals. And I see some of y'all can recognize that, but yeah, the different set of chemicals are released all of a sudden because we're associating it with our past relationships. So our relationships have really done a great job of shaping our statistical predictions, because those are the ones that we're in that remind us, oh, what situation am I in now? That's what the brain's going to say. What situation are you in now based on your past, based on your experiences? And so if you really want to build relationships, you have to realize that, hey, I've got maybe some baggage from past relationships, from sensory input from past relationships. And so we have to be careful about not letting some of that past seep too much into our present and our future. So we have to be able to say, hold on, I get it. Yeah, I was in that relationship, but maybe I need to do something different. And that's what our relationships and our resilience strategies need to do, is to say, okay, and I started from the beginning when I told you this morning, let go of some of that old stuff. We've all been in them. We've all heard people speak. I know that I'm standing here, and there's some people that are judging me based on maybe the quality of my voice, the color of my skin. All those things are being judged based on their experience. And that's why I say, you got to let that go. Pick me. Choose me. Love me. Now, in this irreparable moment. So how do we fight through those past relationships? Good strategies help people to do that. Well, we understand the past. We're not saying that the past didn't happen. And we know it shapes our present and our future. But let's pick what we're doing now. And pararelationships, have you ever heard the term pararelationships? Dean Barnett's a wonderful neuroscientist. He gave me this information about pararelationships. These are those relationships, and all of us have them. It's been along for a long time. It's relationships that you're in that only one party knows that you're in it. Okay? And we've all got them. Those celebrity crushes, right? Yeah. If you're in a relationship, maybe you got a hall pass from your significant other for a celebrity crush, that celebrity has no idea that you're in this relationship, right? I mean, for me, Growing up, it was Judy Cardenas. I was 11 years old. From 11 years old to 16-year-old, I was in a great relationship with Judy. She just never knew it. But the warm feelings every time I thought about her still came back. And now, yes, some of those same things can be pretty sinister. Stalking occurs sometimes in those types of things. But we have those relationships with people that don't even know it. We don't even need the other person's permission to be in a relationship sometimes and to have great feelings about that. Do you remember, just shortly, just last week, we had the anniversary of Michael Jackson's death, 2009. And how many people around the world were grieving from somebody they called Michael? They even had nicknames for him. Do you think they really knew him? Princess Diana? Selena? When we talked about these people like we knew them. Oh, Michael, man, his music is so good. Like, you don't know him. But were those emotions real for people? Would we say that those were fake emotions because they didn't really know? No. Even para relationships, the emotions are real. The chemicals released are real. How do we use that understanding? How do we know that everybody that we're dealing with, sorry about that, everybody that we're working with, they've got para relationships too. They've got people in their lives that they would love to be a part of. And so my hope is that we can use the understanding of how para relationships work, how past relationships work, in order to help people release the right chemicals. We know they happen. We know they're powerful. Can we use them? And then we look at our prospective relationships. Most of us want to be, depending on how bad our past relationships have been, maybe we don't want to be in another relationship. But our desire, we're born and created to want to connect. Our desire is to be with someone else. To have a loving and trusting relationship with somebody else. How long does it take to build a loving and trusting relationship? What do you think? Give me an idea. How long does it take? 6 months? Any other guesses? It might be easier to address it from the inverse. How long does it take to ruin a relationship? Instantly, right? So literally, we are only a second away in any given moment then, right? So it takes a lot of work. So our prospective relationships, we have to realize that people want to be in them. They've been fantasizing about that one true love forever, but it's been impacted by their past relationships and their para relationships. How do we use that knowledge to help people experience something that releases those great chemicals? So that's kind of what this message is all about. So now we're going to get into the down and dirty. So how do we use it? What do we do? And most of you have been part of any of my work. You know that I love acronyms. It's the only way I can remember things. So I use acronyms. And so this acronym, it really comes from my youngest son. It's a really bright kid. And when he was younger, you guys have been around young kids that always, why? You give them an answer. Why? You know, and as great parents, I think we learned it from somewhere. Maybe there was a book about parenting that we learned to say, here's the great thing to say, because I said so, right? How many do that? Am I the only one in the room that does? No, Mom, you better raise your hand. I know you've done that before, but we all do that because I said so. So I took that understanding that, well, I need to learn about relationships because I use I said so way too often. So how can I use that in a better way? So I came up with an acronym called SAID. Okay? And here's what that looks like. Here's the strategy. Here's the down and dirty. If you want to build resilient relationships, if you want to build strategies that can help really engage people, release those chemicals that inspire hope in people, that give us a chance to live in a better world so we don't have to be centered in all that threat constantly. If that's the strategies that you want to learn to build, I think there's 4 critical tools that I think can be helpful. The first we're looking at is safety suggestions. We know what happens when we don't think safety. The brain is already trying to run towards safety and run away from threat. How do we help it predict safety? Run towards safety. Suggest it. Suggestions are helpful. I don't know if you've heard about the science of suggestion. There's lots of ways that we can do so. Even people who've got all kinds of opportunity to think all kinds of wonderful things. So so what I want to do, Karen, can I use you for just a quick example real quick? So I want you to visualize here that I'm holding a piece of fruit, okay? I don't want to embarrass you, okay, because I don't want you to turn red in front of all these people. Okay? So you good with that? Okay, so I want you to visualize I'm holding a piece of fruit, okay? You get a chance to choose. What piece of fruit do you think I'm holding? Okay, so did we work on this outside the hallway or anything? Okay, never talked to you about this. You chose your own free will, right? Okay. Do you think she chose her own free will? Well, why didn't she say watermelon? Because I made a suggestion, just with my hands. She wasn't going to say grape, was she? And then did you notice what I said? I said, I don't want to make you turn red. Did you hear me say that? What fruit about this size do you think she's probably going to be thinking about at that sense? That's suggestion. I mean, she thinks that she came up with that all on her own, and maybe she did. But there's power in suggestion, right? We know that there's a lot of power in suggestion. So why not suggest safety? If we know that that's what releases these wonderful hormones that helps us, these chemicals that help us to feel engaged, why not suggest it to people more often? You know, we're in a different generation. If you think about, there's a time when folks were walking across this earth and they had to deal with animals and predators that were fearful. We don't have to deal. We have houses now. We have cars we can drive away from animals. Right? We have all kinds of things. What do we fear now? What do you think the greatest threat to us now is? Another human being. So when you're in the presence of another human being, the likelihood that threat is going to occur is higher. And so you've got to suggest safety more often because their brain is already looking for safety. It's trying to figure out well, am I safe or am I not? Is this friend or am I foe? And so the very first thing you do, every strategy that you come up with has to have some suggestions of safety to say, hey, we're doing this because it's safe. It's going to help you to engage you in safe ways. You don't have to spend any energy trying to fight threats. I'm doing the heavy lifting for your brain by saying, don't have to worry about all that. You're going to be safe by the suggestions of safety. And there's a lot of different things that can suggest. Now, it's different for every situation. Some people say, well, when you smile, it suggests safety. For some, but for others, it doesn't. So hopefully you built up enough relationship, enough insight into somebody to know, well, what do they need as safety? Resilience strategies work best when you have insight into people. If I know that Karen really likes something, right now she's wearing an Astros jersey. If I really think that she likes that, I can build safety by maybe referencing that. By making a suggestion that, hey, I'm here to be a friend, to be safe. So that's a start. It can't end there because we also know that people try to do that for nefarious purposes as well. They use that sense of safety. Oh, hey, can you help me find my puppy? Right? In ways that aren't always honorable. So we can't leave it there. But we have to start with trying to suggest safety, that I'm okay, I'm safe. Think about that from a racial perspective. Typically they say if you come into a room and nobody looks like you, but all of a sudden you see a group of people that kind of look like you in the corner, you're probably going to gravitate there because you think that there's a sense of safety in people who are like you. Is that racist? No, that's called being human. When you're a baby, when you're coming out of that womb, you're looking into the face more often than not of somebody who has the same gene pool as you do, that is caring for you and keeping you safe. And you're looking at that and saying, okay, people who look like that keep me safe. And somebody else that may have a different skin tone, I don't know about them. That might cause a threat. That's not racism. That's what our brain will do in the surface of trying to keep us safe. Because we're trying to seek safety through all of our sensations, through what we see, what we smell, what we touch. You've had safe sensations, haven't you? You've had those. I remember my dad was a great grill master. We had this barbecue pit that was about 6 feet tall and about 4 feet wide, and it had all these kind of different levels. And he would like spend a day before the food was ready. He was already out there, with some friends, and they're talking, but so you could smell this smoked meat for hours and hours. And I hope some of you aren't offended that maybe you're vegetarians. Maybe you get turned on by people mowing grass or something. I don't know. But there's that sensation that you have. But when you're smelling that meat, and you just feel connected, like, wow, it's like I could go into my friend's house a block away, and the closer I got to home, that smell started to feel safe. So you got sensations of safety. And through what you see, everything you do. So suggest that. Give them an opportunity to do that. If you've seen me before, you know I wear the same color every single day. Because when I was working out at Jubilee Leadership Academy, I know that there's kids who may have been triggered by different things. I'm thinking, I'm going to suggest that, hey, by what I wear shouldn't be a threat to you. It's going to be consistent every single day. And it makes choosing my outfit every morning a lot easier too. But hopefully it's a suggestion of safety. You don't have to guess. You don't have to spend any energy predicting what I might look like on any given day. That's suggestion safety. So any strategy you choose, hopefully you can start it with suggesting safety. Making it clear, using the terms. If people are familiar with that term, and if they're comfortable with that term. If they're comfortable with another term, use another term that works for them. Because you're suggesting safety. And now we want to start to anchor those sensations. If they've got safety on the mind, that just like I did with Karen, I'm going to anchor that by talking about red, by giving her every suggestion, every sensation I had, by my words, by what she was saying. I was trying to anchor those sensations of safety, to say, hey, everything I do, if it's backing up that suggestion of safety, it's going to be much more impacting. So it's like turning up the volume on our senses. So when you know somebody is listening to you, sometimes when you start to speak a little softer, they may listen harder. Because you're anchoring that sensation of the volume of your voice. Maybe you can do it by what they can smell. Have you ever been on that walk? It's like take the time to smell the roses. Have you ever really been on a walk and you smell the power of flowers? The aroma that comes to some of them is like, wow. Or like when it rains, that's what it does it for me. After a rain, there's just smells that are just so enriching. You want to anchor those sensations of safety. If I can keep you in that space of safety, started it by making a good suggestion. Well, I'm going to keep you there by anchoring with all the sensations I can. Everything I can do. High pitches, if I know that drives you away from safety, that leads you to threat, I'm going to avoid those. Soothing tones, if I think that keeps you safe, I'm going to increase those. It's easy, right? So you increase what helps them feel good and decrease what things that might lead to a threat. But how do you know? It's called a relationship. You take the time to get to know somebody. You can even ask. Well, it's novel, isn't it? How many relationships do you start by getting to really, truly know somebody? I think you should take a test on your partner. That's a little strange, but I'm thinking, if we just knew the expectation, we want to know, hey, what works for you and what doesn't? That's anchoring the sensations. And then we want to infer relationship. When I talk about what I mean by inferring relationship is I want you to know that there's a relationship between us. But if I just tell you, okay, it's like a bad pickup line is when somebody tells you that we're in a relationship together and you're like, who are you? That doesn't work very well for you, does it? But if you make the inference, that's where the pair relationship starts, is that you made an inference that there's a relationship. They didn't get to decide, but you decided. That the power of that is strong. So I want you to know that, hey, we're in a relationship. We're in a family. We're in a collective. We're in a group. We're in a community. Whatever the terms you want to use, and let them know, hey, we're in this together. This is about us. If you can get people thinking that we are an us, that's the power of in-group. You know the science about in-groups, right? When you feel like you're in an in-group, you will add and give more favor, more privilege to folks who are in your in-group. And in-groups can be determined by a lot of really bizarre things, because that's kind of what we do. The in-groups can be established by somebody's name, right? If we've got the same last name, we're in an in-group. And what do you do when somebody else that you're in a crowd and they mention their name, they have the same, oh, their last name is Griffin. You go over to them, right? Hey, I don't know you, but it's like we are family because we share a name. How about a name to a team? Do you think there's any power in people who talk about fandomship in the same way that we're part of the same team? For those of you who are Dallas Cowboy fans, they say you're America's team. You can't win very well, but you're still America's team, right? It's like you're identifying that you're a part of my family. That's inferring a relationship. When we can wear the same things. That's what uniforms were designed to do, is to remind people we are in the same family because we look alike. When you're in the same location. We're family because we are all right here in this room. The folks online, maybe they're even feeling like, gosh, I wish I was there. I wish I was some of the special people that got a chance to be in the room, because we're in the same location together. When you experience the same sensations together, you feel like you're in a relationship. Love some of the things that they did in the scientific, in laboratories. They had kids swinging on a swing. And they had a set of kids that were swinging together and a set of kids that they had swing opposite. And then they let them play together. The ones that swung together in synchronicity played with much more harmony than those who swung opposite. Because they were thinking that, hey, we experienced these sensations together. We've gone through this together. That's inferring relationship. Find ways to mention. Find a strategy that lets people know, hey, we're doing this together. We're gonna respond together. We are family. Some of the kids I worked with at the youth ranch, the things I'd say, hey, that's not what we do. You and I, we do something different. We're respectful to one another, aren't we? And they're like, yeah, because I inferred relationship. You don't treat people like that you're in a relationship with, when you can infer relationship. So any strategy you design, find ways to make sure it infers relationship. Put them in the same colors. Put them on the same side of the room. Find some ways to say, hey, we are together. This is our class. Now, it can create some complications because every time you create an in-group, that means people are inferring out-groups. And you really want to try to avoid that. Allow everybody into your in-group that has that, hopefully that it can have that same affiliation, because they'll have the same affinity for one another. We are together. We're family. How do you feel when somebody recognizes and infers relationship with you that you've agreed to? Doesn't that feel good? We're in a relationship. And that's what all those feel-good chemicals are about. You remember that very first time? I remember the very first time that my very first kiss. And the sensation still comes to me every time I think about it. Bubble yum. You guys remember bubble yum? She was chewing grape bubble yum. And that grape bubble, it just had a certain sensation. And now we're talking like almost 50 years ago, but that smell, because it inferred a relationship. It's like we're together. And the very first time we held hands, we were together. We were in a relationship. We lied to my mom about it, but we still were in a relationship. And so that inferring of relationship can be powerful. So take some time in any strategy for relationship. Now, we'll put all this together. Let's look at those individual parts. And then dosing and spacing of practice becomes really important. It's when we talk about dosing and spacing, repetition comes to mind. We think repetition is really important, okay? But sometimes we get it wrong, because we also know that the brain is really, really smart. And if it learns something, it can hold on to it for a period of time that we can use right away. It's called cramming. Anybody ever cram for a test? When you cram for a test, you can go right in there and you can do fairly well because the brain says, oh, this information must be important because it's coming at me like crazy. And then you can use it right away. But what happens like a day later? You don't remember any of that stuff anymore. Because the brain said, well, it must not have been that important because you're not even using it anymore. So we have to, but if you learn it, use it, learn more, use it, learn, use it. The brain says, oh, this must be important. So I'm going to hold on to it. And it starts to even create special places in the brain to hold on to certain things, like faces. As a baby, you see faces a lot. And the brain says, well, the faces must be important because I'm seeing that a lot. So I'm going to create a certain place in the brain where we can hold faces. And it does. And sometimes that space can be really powerful. Have you ever heard of the term pareidolia? It's when you see faces in places you're not supposed to see faces. Like the Pope tart. When somebody saw the face of the Pope in a Pop Tart. Or the nun bun. I guess they saw the Virgin Mary in a cinnamon roll. You start seeing faces. Even people see it. Oh, look at the cloud. What? Cheez-Its? No, I guess it was Jesus. It was Jesus' face on a Cheeto. And I'm thinking, you start seeing, because your brain thinks faces are important. And those people were important in the lives of the person who saw that. And they kind of got them too close together. Because the brain said, you see it a lot. You've got repetition. That's important. So you have to practice, and practice a lot. But you also have to do that spaced out. A little bit of spacing. Because the brain also, if it says the same thing over and over and over again, it thinks, I already know this now. And I can kind of skip through that and just realize that it'll come back to me. And sometimes, at the most inopportune time, the brain forgets because it's like, I wasn't paying attention. I thought I knew it. I thought it was there for me. But if you can space it out, so high dose, lots of practice, stop for a little bit, and go back to it. The brain says, oh, wow, that's that stuff I did before. I didn't realize that. It's kind of like Jerry was telling me about, well, I played the guitar a lot, and my fingers got to get used to it. But as soon as he started playing, I bet his brain said, oh, yeah, that's this again. And it comes right back. That's what they call it. It's like riding a bike. The brain says, I remember now. And so if we have just enough, but if we rode the bike every single day, the brain would just think, I got this. And it would probably do fairly well until it decided, yeah, I know it. You never have to think about it again. And then you get older, and all of a sudden, don't have the same recall. But if you space it, the brain says, I better hold on to it, because I don't know when it's coming back. I don't know when I'm going to experience it again. So how that works in terms of a strategy, you don't want to like what would happen if you said hello to somebody every single day? Oh, I heard that saying hello to people is a really good way to build safety. So you said hello every single day. Every time you say hello, 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 hello. Do you think that there's any point in time that their brain is going to just tune that out, and that hello is not going to feel special anymore? Have you ever had that feeling before? I have that a lot at Walmart when they say have a good day. You're like, you're not talking to me. You're not even looking at me when you say that. You don't even mean that. Because you're just so used to hearing it, you start to tune it out. You don't want them to tune out that sense of safety. So you space it. You can say hello for a while, then the next time, again for a couple days, say something different. Great to see you. Then change up, say something different. And now their brain is like, I can't wait. Something's going to happen. Something good's going to happen. I don't know what it is yet. But they're anticipating. And they're excited. And the moment that you say something like, oh, that's what that is now. Yeah, okay. And they never know when they're going to get something new. So it builds anticipation. Dosing and spacing. So I just want to show you what that looks like. We've been doing that a little bit today. I don't have my train whistle up here with me. But you remember my train whistle, right? That's what that all aboard was. It was using that same strategy in a sense. Yeah. I started by saying, in order to keep us safe and keep us rolling along, remember when I said that to you? That was suggesting safety, that this is a good process. This is for us to have a good process. And then I can start anchor the sensation. I told you there's going to be 2 blasts of this whistle. These pleasing blasts of this whistle are going to be great for you. That's my way of trying to anchor it in. So like when you hear it, that you didn't get agitated, because some people are like, what's that whistle? I don't want to shock you. I want you to know it's coming and it's going to be pleasant. It's going to be great. You're going to hear some wonderful things. And it's a us in for relationship. We are going to respond in this way together. And the very first time we were a little off, and we got better every time we tried it. You start inferring relationship, and your choral response starts to sound like a group. Really easy exercise. And then, as long as I keep doing that through the course of today, you'll all respond really well. If I were to do it every single moment, after a while, you tune it out. But the dosing and spacing has to be right. So that's all what building resilient strategies is all about. Having enough knowledge about the science. I mean, you certainly don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand that people experience threat, people experience safety. And if I had my wishes, I would want them to experience safety. And the way to do that is to know that it starts with sensory input. They're going to start with some sensations that they experience that are connected with safety. And that we want to be in relationship. And so it becomes easy. Sometimes just words can make things so powerful. So what I want to do, I want to end with this. I think I was supposed to end at 11:20. Was I supposed to end at 11:20? Tony, I am so sorry. So I'm gonna wrap up and let you guys go. But since my mom is in the room, I have to say this, and it's a great thing. It's a great strategy that she used for me. It's great. It actually started on my college freshman year, off to college, and I never heard my father. I never doubted it, but I never heard my father. I don't remember hearing my father say the words "I love you." Never doubted it, never questioned it. You'd ask me, I'd say, yeah, absolutely. Freshman year of college is the first time I remember it. You know, you're supposed to call when you get there, and I called. Oh, I'm so excited! I met my own roommate. It's kind of great. And my dad says, "Son, I love you." And I started to cry. He started to cry. Back then it was like $12 worth over long distance phone, but it was a bonding experience just to hear and just realize now that so he says it much more often, and that dosing and spacing will start to really take place. But man, I feel loved. And my mom was always one who says, I mean, she was the hugger and the squeezer, embarrass you in front of your friends kind of love all the time. But it's a poem that I want to leave you with. She put it in an envelope, and she said, "Don't read this don't open it until you get to college." I thought it was money, so the first AM PM, I'm trying to see how many hot dogs I can buy. But said, "To the last of my sons, who will soon be on his way. But before you leave my arms, there's something I must say. Take this message with you, wherever you might go. Thought I wish the very best for you, and I thought I'd let you know. So when you're out on your own, and your mind drifts to the past, know that I wish the very best for you, and I hope your good times last." And I want to say, Mom, my good times have lasted. And I hope your good times last as well, even though I went over time. Tony's coming in just a few minutes, so thank you very much for your time and attention. Appreciate it. Take a really quick 2-minute break. Stand up, stretch out, and Tony will be with you in just a second.
thought it was kind of funny, but really there is this purpose driven about, man, we have to have our devices. We have to have our iPads, our phones, or whatever it is. And I started coming back to how do we recharge? How do we charge ourselves? Because without power, without being able to give, how do we get to the point where we can give of ourselves?
Does that work? All right. So for me, it's really, there's kind of a funny thing to it, but at the same time, it is definitely, how do we recharge? I went to a conference one time, and I loved the way this person said it. So I'm an EMT, been an EMT for a long time, and one of the first things we do is put oxygen on somebody, because one, it could be that they need it, but two, it's almost a placebo. You put that mask on and they're like, yes, and they instantly, whether it affects them physically or not, mentally, it helps them. And I heard someone say, what is your oxygen mask? And I was like, I'm stealing that, right? Because as we look at that, it's such a good representation of how do we recharge? What gives us oxygen? You know, I fish, I ski, I hunt, I hike, all those things that gets me outside, and that's my recharge. Sitting on my patio in gray light, I wake up at 4:15, 4:30 in the morning just to hear the world wake up. And it's the most peaceful time you could have. So if you're not a morning person, try it one time and then go back to bed, right? Because it is peaceful. You hear the birds start waking up. You hear all these things happening, and you're like, oh, you know, and the day just starts over. So I've been married for over 25 years. I've been with my wife for 30 years. We have 2 kids, and she has a pretty big job. She's a medical manager at a hospital, and she would come home and start talking about these people that are mistreating her, and as a husband, I'm like, let's go get them, right? And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, right? And all I'm doing is loving on her. That's all I'm doing is trying to help, and as a guy, we want to fix it, which I knew we couldn't. But it's what it started doing is creating anxiety in her because of my reaction. I'm like, I'm just trying to love on you. Let's go get these people. And she's like, you don't understand. I had a really rough day, and I came home and I wanted to unwind and disconnect, and you escalated it again. So this is where this question came from. Am I someone's calm or am I someone's chaos? And you can ask that question in any situation. I am the facilities director at a local resort that just got purchased, and I can either be chaos for my employees, or I can be their calm and say, what's next? Right now we have a catastrophic failure at our resort. The chiller's out, so our house and everything's 84 degrees, or we have guests staying, and I'm here talking, not fixing the problem, but I have people on it, right? And when the guy came to me that was working on it, he said, I don't know how to tell you this. I go, what? He goes, I've been sitting in my van 20 minutes. I'm just a ball of energy. I'm nervous. I'm like, what? He goes, we can't get it fixed. I'm like, okay, what's the solution? And he goes, what? I go, what's the solution? We can't fix it. Move on. And that instantly, you could see him just go, you know, just totally like relieved of not exploding. So I was his calm, right? I could have been chaos. I could have exploded and said, what? Now what are we going to do? You know, but it wasn't any of that. Now, do I do that every time? No. None of us do. But we can practice. Right? We can try to get to that point where we're staying calm. I mean, I get agitated. We all get agitated, and we move forward. But as we go into situations, it is really that question that I have to focus on. Last night, we put on an event for 400 people at our facility. That's quite the undertaking for a resort and to have staffing and food, and we didn't run out of food, so that's good, right? 400 firefighters that want to eat better not run out of food. Right, and so as we're doing, and they were just so elated, and so we were there calm in this huge and they were having such a great time. I'm thinking, man, this applies in so many aspects of life. Okay, I'm gonna let you read this real quick. What do you see? An error? How many saw that right away? You guys are so polite. It's wrong. Okay. Teaching in prison, not so much. I taught them math. You're a math teacher, nice job, Mr. McGuire. You know, you're an idiot. I'm not learning from you. They're like, wait a second. And so they start looking at this, and what I did was I said, look, you all saw the negative. You saw the wrong thing. I can either choose to see your one felony, or I can choose to see the 8 things that you have to offer. We forget that there's still 8 correct answers there. We choose to see that negative. Not always, but most of the time when we're judging and we're in that mindset of judging, we see the negatives so quickly. How can we see the positives? What does someone have to offer? And all of this connects to purpose and hope. When I see an inmate, I don't see a number. I don't see their felony. I see a person. I see a human. You know, they're always asking me, what society thinks of us? I said, well, they think you're green aliens with purple horns. Because that's what the movies portray. 96% of those guys want to go home. And they're going to go home. They're going to be your neighbor. 4% that are staying in there are the problem. Because they need people to do work for them. So that 96%, they just want something different. And I was there long enough that I saw the revolving door, guys coming back, and they get idle hands, and it's like, what happened? You know, I lost my job and started drinking and got picked up on the suspended, and this revolving door, and it's like, how can we get out of that cycle? What gives you purpose? What gives you hope? And so when they start looking at this stuff and you start calling them, good morning, gentlemen, they were like, what? What do you mean I'm a gentleman? Yeah, good morning. How you doing, guys? You start treating them as a human, they start having a little bit different purpose. And when they start having that purpose, they start connecting hope to that, a hope for something different. When I first talked to Laura Clark about this, it was waking up on purpose was my title. And I really do believe if we wake up on purpose, we get out of bed every day and we say, this is our goal today. Who am I going to help today? How am I going to help myself? I know it may sound selfish, but for me, I've got to help myself. My day yesterday, I got to work at 5:30 a.m. and I got home at 10:45 last night. It's a couple hours, right? I mean, but I helped a lot of people, and I was there with a purpose, and so it didn't seem that long. I have a purpose today, and so I woke up this morning, I was like, okay, we have a purpose to go help try to get something fixed or get something. And if we wake up, those days don't seem that long. They really don't, but we lose sight of our purpose. And then that hope slowly goes away. And so how can I connect purpose every day? And the next, what happened? So trauma-informed care. My dad left when I was 4 years old, pulled my mom out of a car, beat her to a bloody pulp, walked past me, got in a car, and drove away. That was the last time I ever saw him. Would you ever know that looking at me today and not being able to tell you that? For me, it's not about that moment in my life. Correct? It's about what we live. So if we're looking at trauma-informed care, out of the ACEs, I'm a 9 out of 10. Statistically, I shouldn't be standing in front of you, really. And you look at that study, and you look at the things that go along with ACEs and trauma, and so when I did this in my class, the average was about 7 in the prison. And I gave the ACE questionnaire to every student, and I said, I don't care about your number. Just information. It's not a diagnosis, right? Dr. End is really specific about it. It's just information. When I asked, and I said, who just wants to share the number? How many think wanted to share the number? Lots. Why? Rick just talked about it. Connection. They wanted to be connected. So I had guys like, I'm a 9, Mr. McGuire, I'm a 9, I'm a 9. Like, yay. And they're like excited because they know. And then they can start processing it. Then they can start understanding why maybe they thought the way they thought. Wow, this brain science stuff, I didn't know this. And then they start going home and they get on the phone and they talk to their family. My daughter's a 9 out of 10. And we're going through the ACE questionnaire, and we're going through this book that you gave us. So on our website, on CRI's website, we have a 42 Resilient Building Block pamphlet, and I got that introduced into my classroom. So every student that went through my class ended up getting that pamphlet and taking it home. I helped Terry kind of reformulate that into an adult book, because the one that we had was for kids to parents, and the guys were always like, I feel like a kid when we're going over this. I'm like, I know, like, but get the purpose, not the verbiage, right? Because we can look at all that stuff. And so but then when we got the newer one, they're like, oh yeah, they could connect with it a little better. 12:10, right? That's when I'm done. Alan, is that right? 12:10? It's like you're on your own. So I was in my dentist's office and I saw this slide and I was super disappointed. I'm like, no, that's my slide. She goes, no, this is what a tooth looks like. I'm like, no, that's what trauma looks like. Right? I mean, this slide's been out a long time, and if you ever seen me speak or ever heard, I kind of share the same stories over and over, but there's always something new you can get out of it, or someone else new that's watching that may connect differently. And for me, I talked to Rick about this and said, Rick, I just feel like I'm saying the same things. I'm just keep doing it. Because there is something about hearing something twice and 3 times and 4 times that you think about it differently at a time in your life. My grandma, she had read the Bible through 37 times in her life, highlighted, and she'd be reading. She says, oh, I've never read this before. And we're all like, what? What are you talking about? But to her at that moment in her life, it meant something different. I can talk to people about the same things over and over, and then when we connect, we go, oh yeah, that didn't mean that to me a month ago, but now it means that right now. And so when I share these stories, I'm thinking, oh, how can I change it up, make it different? But this really set in with me. I had TAs in my classroom, and so as a TA, they came in, they're responsible for tools. So in my classroom, they could check out hammers, squares, saws, anything you'd see on a job site, they could have. Was it scary? No. Did I feel safe? No. How many of you drove here today? So imagine working in prison, you driving down the road, and you are expecting the car on the other side of the road coming at you to stay on that side of the white line, right? Do we feel safe? Probably pretty safe, but there's that unexpected risk. And that's what I felt like going into prison. I'm taking a calculated risk. And if you get safe and you get complacent, that's when things happen. And so keeping these guys accountable. And so the TAs were really serious about it because they had a whole tool crib with over 400 tools in it that they had to check off every day and make sure everything was there. And so there's accountability. And so I was trying to hire a TA, and I called the living units. I said, hey, I want to hire this guy. And, she's like, oh, no. I'm like, what? And went through his criminal record and read some stuff. And that was the last time I did that. But he listed all this stuff that was horrific stuff that had happened to him. And then at the end of it, it said, but I did better than my family did to me. It was stuff that he had done to his family. And then he said it was better than what they had done to me. And this became real because I didn't see his underlying condition, right? I saw the 10% of his behavior, which was actually pretty good, but there was a lot of stuff going on inside. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we just never know someone's story. We judge so quickly. And, how many of you had coworkers when you see them come across and you're just like, that's not good. You want to run out of there, right? Because you can see on their face and you're like, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know their beliefs. But you're sitting there going, do I want to have this conversation right now? Like, I'm not sure, right? And so as we look through the lens of trauma-informed care, it's easy to see this instead of judge. And not always, right? But if we can practice 90% of doing good and that 10% of being rough, right? Like that's a mindset, right? It's like, okay, I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing what I can, but we have rough days. We all do. And it's one of those things, what do we do with it? Anybody ever heard of the worry tree? It's a contractor and he has a horrible day, truck breaks down, problems on the job site, and he asks the homeowner to take him to his house, and the guy gets out of his truck and the guy stops by this tree and just does some of that to it. The guy in the truck's going, what's going on? So the guy walks in and he opens the door and here's his kid's dad and his wife's giving him a kiss. What are you doing? This guy's like, hey guys. And he's just all on him and he goes in and grabs the guy and goes back out to the truck and the guy goes, all right, man, I got to ask. goes, what? He goes, what was up with the tree? He goes, oh, that's my worry tree. Because I put all my worries on that tree at night, and when I come back out the next day, they don't seem to all be there. Right? So how do we get rid of those worries? How do we get past that point and connect that purpose to our hope? Because he could have went into that house with all those worries and made his family feel disconnected and start losing a little bit of purpose and a little bit of hope. I did that with my wife. I'm trying to help, trying to love on her, and it's creating chaos for her. It's creating a disconnect from me, and it took me a while to understand that. So my wife comes from a 0 ACE household. Blending that is like oil and water sometimes, right? Because I'm a 9 out of 10, she's a 0, and so we're looking at that, and how do you navigate that and see how she was raised? You know, she's done a really good job with just tolerating me, I think, right? Like, I mean, 30 years is a long time to deal with someone who's just processing. I mean, I learned this stuff six years ago, and it changed my life in an evening. One evening, it changed my life. I learned about brain science, and I learned about what had happened to me wasn't my fault, right? It was stuff that I had processed, and so as we look at the way that we look at this stuff, another one is, you ever seen those people you look at and you just go, what the hell is wrong with them? Everybody's like, oh, he's in my head, right? You can see him walking, and you're just like, and they have this attitude, or they've got this behavior, and it's like, what? Kids. How many of you work with kids in here? Kids. We can see them walking through. Oh, what the hell's wrong with this kid? Right? I've got an 18-year-old daughter, so I know how it works. Right? My son's 16, and we're looking, oh my gosh. But what we don't see is this. And so if you can look at them instead and think, man, what have they been through? Do you hear the difference in that connotation than that scorn, that just looking at, instead of it being, man, what have they seen? How are they raised? Did they have a place to live? Did they have food to eat? You know, the whole trauma-informed movement kind of birthed in Walla Walla through Lincoln High School, Beyond the Paper Tigers. Everybody saw that? So if you can, it's on Amazon. The Paper Tiger documentary is interesting, coming from Walla Walla, because teachers that were part of that at the moment, the beginning of that is a movie, and it was very chaotic, and they didn't feel like that was a good representation of what the school was every day. But at the same time, they started looking like, oh, there is a lot of that was happening, but they were processing through it, and they were just taking kids and feeding them. When was the last time you ate? And so instead of saying, man, what is wrong with that person? What have they been through? What have they seen? So as we look through this, there is a gentleman that I really, I've taught over 400 incarcerated individuals. And for me, it's how do you connect with them and how do you not get personal? Right? Because there is a line there where it's not. And so they were really good with me to, and so I ended a presentation like this. I did the same a presentation with them every class. And I'd always ask them, what did you learn in class? End of the class, I gave certificates, feel good moment, connected them to purpose, to hope. And all these guys are going, and I said, now if one guy says something, you can't use it over here, and you see about 6 guys go, oh, I learned how to swing a hammer, right? So our class was a physical agility class. So they learned how to carry plywood. They learned how to do wheelbarrows. They learned how to run a skill saw. They learned how to hammer. They learned so there's a lot of practical skills. And so I was going through my presentation, and we ended it, and I said, hey, what do you guys think? And this guy at the very end said, Mr. McGuire, I wish you could see the fruit of the seeds that you plant. And for me, that changed my perspective every day, walking through 13 security checkpoints to get to my office, because I was really planting seeds. And so as you go through the dedication and you go through and try to find your purpose, sometimes we have a hard time finding purpose. You know, I look at a resort that's 84 acres and we have a lot of stuff going on, and it gets overwhelming sometimes. And it was, what is my purpose, right? And we're just fixing stuff, and you get your head in the trenches, and we forget to connect that to helping the person next to it. I'm going to end with one story. I'm uneducated formally, but we had a VPI at the community college. She was very good at sneaking me into places where I didn't feel comfortable. So she had me do a presentation to all the VPIs of the community colleges in Washington State, which I did not know I was going there. She tricked me. And I was like, what did you do? You know, and here's people with master's degrees, doctorates, are all college. They're running the colleges in Washington. And she grabbed me, put her hands on both shoulders, and she was just a small, older lady, grandma type. And she goes, Tony, you may not have a master's, but you have a master's in people. That sentence changed my life. She connected purpose to my hope. Because I hoped I was helping people. It gave me a confidence to go, and you never know who you're going to say one sentence to in your life that's going to connect their purpose and their hope. But if we don't say it, if we don't take a risk, then we're missing the opportunity to help someone else. And I see her all the time. She retired probably 3 years after I started my career there, and I always see her, and I was like, you changed my life. I tell her that all the time because she needs to hear that, right? She had a big job, and there's tons of people that have the same stories about her because that's who she is. But every time I see her now in town, you changed my life. She gives me a hug, and but it changed my mindset of what I'm capable of and who I can stand in front of. So don't ever doubt yourself in the sense of, this is who I'm going in front of. Be prepared and live your purpose, because you will give other people hope. I promise you. If I can come from where I came from and do the things that I do, you're going to give someone hope. You just have to look for opportunity every day, waking up on purpose and taking an opportunity, taking a risk with something that is out of your comfort zone, out of something you're willing to do before, and now I'm going to do something different. That's it. So thank you for your time today. I hope it was valuable and enjoy. Oh, do you have a question? So what I did in the prison, it was really because obviously they're being punished all the time, right? And they go through this process. And so for me, I started, they're still accountable, right? We still have to hold them accountable and what that accountability looks like. And so if a guy laid hands on another guy in the classroom, he got cuffed up and taken out, right? If number one reason you got kicked out of my classroom was if you made fun of someone else, you were gone. And they're like, what do you mean? It's not a safe learning environment. So that was a big, huge start with him is if you make fun of someone, you're gone. And they started respecting each other because of that. So every situation looks different, and how we hold them accountable. And I think that's the key thing that I learned was every student has an accountability somewhere. We have to find it. We have to try to discover what makes them tick and then say, okay, we're going to remove this for a season, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, or I don't like unveiled threats or veiled threats, right? I don't like to just like, oh, I'm going to, because then they're like, sure you are, so then it's really following through. But the accountability piece is what I learned, that they actually begin to love it. Like, oh, like a higher standard. And so, but the accountability sometimes looks like punishment, but at the same time, it's connecting them to something and trying to have a conversation. And the other part is relationships, right? That's our number one factor, is healthy relationships to buffer all of this stuff. And so fortunately, I had people in my life that pushed and held me accountable, but they loved me, and I knew they loved me. So once kids and adults find that we just maybe don't care a little bit, but I figured out really early on that if I cared, they respected me. And then how do I hold them accountable? And every student was different. I mean, we see that, right? Every adult's different, how we hold them accountable. You know, you could spank one kid and they'd be like, whatever. Another kid, you go, you're gonna, right? Like it's that difference in opinion of how you treat them. You know, and I'm gonna take your cell phone. I don't care. And then one kid's be like, you know, you take a cell phone from an adult, see what happens, right? But I mean, so I think the relationship piece and the accountability piece is huge. And it took me a long time in the prison to learn the accountability and what it takes for each one. And you can kind of do a blanket one too, but the punishment piece, everybody has a different opinion on that. And some of that comes from administration. Some of it comes from the ground up and finding that balance of what that's going to look like. I know when Lincoln started doing their stuff, they had a room just to go and debrief and like they could go chill out because it was getting so escalated. And I know my daughter just graduated a couple weeks ago and she really struggled her senior year because of some of the stuff that's being let go in the school, which is kind of hard. Teachers not holding some kids accountable and still moving forward. So it's on the teachers also. And then but she's pretty accountable to herself. And so it was really a struggle for her, even towards the end. She was, I'm just ready to be done. I'm like, and she really enjoyed school. So I don't know if that was just rambling or if that was some conversation. And then making those clear at the beginning. So my guys signed a contract. I had a contract with them in my classroom the first day they were sitting there. And these are the rules of the shop. And the number one is if you make fun of someone, you're kicked out. They're like, what? I'm like, safe environment to learn. But I had a contract with them. They signed it, and then they would say, why are you infracting me? Here's the contract. And they knew the rules up front. And then like, okay. And most guys are like, yep, I got it. So, and that's harder when you have a bunch of kids and stuff. But I mean, some kids need that accountability for sure. Yeah. Now I'm really done. Thank you so much. I'll be hanging around too. So
we're gonna take a break for lunch. So if you ordered lunch, you're welcome to go grab lunch. I think Susan, do you know if they can still pay for lunch? Yes. Okay. So it's still possible to pay for lunch if you wanted to, and then we'll come back and do the screening of Playing Peace.